So, ladies and gentlemen, our next session of the day is floating power plants opening up new markets for scaling up renewable energy generating capacity. Our moderator for the session is Mr. Carol De Winter, Director Floating PV Fell Energy Group, and he's also CBC Co-Chair of Floating PV and Clean Tech Hub. Can we have Carol on the dais, please? Our co-moderator and a great supporter of RE again, Mr. Dharmendra Kumar from IHS Markit. Welcome, Dharmendra. Mr. Siddhant Agarwal, CEO at Quant Solar. Do we have Siddhant here? No, we don't have Siddhant. All right. Mr. Deepak Usha Devi, Managing Director and CEO, Seal and Terre India. Deepak, please. Deepak was around. I'll have to check that. Mr. Sachin Rele, CEO, Atomic Energy Systems Private Limited, and Mr. Partho Ganguly, Business Development Head, India, Sangro, FPVs. Do we have Partho as well here? I think our speakers are running a little late. Yes, Partho, please join us quickly.
Over the last couple of years, Clean Tech Business Club, a private and independent human-to-human leadership club, has been bringing together trusted leaders of solar, clean tech, and other disruptive technologies industries with the leaders of the financial community and investors, top corporations, energy companies, and utilities, as well as political decision makers and public opinion influencers, and work hand in hand on financial instruments and business models to scale up clean tech investments from billions to trillions while shaping the future today. In 2020, faced with COVID-19 crises, Clean Tech Business Club leaders driven by the power of H2H blockchain and United DNA started Together We Are Stronger initiative and committed themselves to its manifesto, Declaration 2030, to jointly anticipate, shape, and lead together the clean tech decade. Our Declaration 2030 is a call to all to unite and together transform our planet, as together we are more effective than apart. And now in 2021, we are launching the Club 2.0 with our new H2H blockchain structure and empowering platforms to unite clean tech industry with related stakeholders while empowering their businesses and guiding them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year towards a new world's paradigm. And we will make it by combining business with meaningfulness and joy, because together we are stronger. Thumbs up for solar.
Okay. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and a warm welcome to our panelists. Also to the audience for sticking out so late in the day to learn about floating solar. And a big thanks to the organizers of REI that have decided to put floating solar on their agenda and into the spotlight. So my name is Karel De Winter. I'm the floating EV manager for international developments of the Feeling Energy Group. We are an international developer with a focus for floating systems. And I'm also honored to be the co-chair of the Clean Tech Business Hub for floating PV systems. That's an international private club for people who are very passionate about solar and are driving the clean tech revolution forward. So floating PV has often been dubbed as the third pillar of the PV industry. And I've always found that a very flattering name for a segment that has only constructed year-to-date approximately 3 gigawatt of solar systems. So it's also surprising it took us so long to get recognized as one of the main contributors, because the first plant was actually built in 2007. But that's why we're here today, to put this focus on this segment, to zoom in on what are the opportunities that it can bring. So let me give you a few numbers on this segment. The floating solar currently has an estimated pipeline by 2026 of 13 gigawatt. 70% of that pipeline will be constructed in Asia. Around 35 countries have had a first experience with a floating solar system, and about 600 projects have been built. The compound annual growth rate of this sector is 35 to 40%, which is very impressive. But still, it's peanuts if you compare it against what is a ground mount or terrestrial solar, of which 1,500 gigawatts has been built already, yeah? And of which last year 150 gigawatts was built in 1 year time. But in floating, we're not aiming to catch up. We really want to put the global potential into the spotlight. And there's been some interesting studies on this. The World Bank had made an estimate that the available man-made water bodies globally account for 400,000 square kilometers. Now, if only 1% of that would be covered with floating, we would have a 400 gigawatt market. And also in India, which has 70,000 square kilometers of these water bodies, there was a fantastic study done by TERI that identified that they concluded actually that 260 gigawatt could be built. So I believe that the potential is much higher than we're currently expecting. Even in the US, there was a study where they looked at floating, combining it with hydro. And in this co-location, they came to the conclusion that if you put on 20% of the reservoirs floating PV, you could generate 7.5 terawatts hours of electricity per year. So it's clear that we've only just scratched the surface of what we can do in this segment. So I believe even better numbers would emerge once the industry matures. But let me now turn to our panelists, and I would like each of them to introduce themselves, give a short intro on why they joined the floating segment, and also, if you can, a short glimpse of what is your company presence and your offerings. And I'll start from my far left. Yeah, if you could give a short introduction.
Yeah, I'm Partho Ganguly, and I'm working with SunGrow Floating for past 4 years. And SunGrow has been in the field of floating for more than 6 years. Our first project was 40 megawatt, and world's largest at that point of time, and it is working. In India, we are looking floating to pick up. We are seeing the sun rays, but again, the day is not coming. There are many challenges, policy level, many things are coming up, and we hope to see to resolve those issues with these discussions and taking our matters to government and the other stakeholders. Thank you.
I'm Sachin Rele. I'm representing Easy Floating Autonic. Easy Floating is a Spanish company. They're one of the oldest company where they have installed projects since 2009. It's a 12-year-old solar installation, and I've personally seen it working for 12 years. We have tied up with them, and we formed this new company called Easy Floating. We are trying to raise equity for our company to start manufacturing floats in India. Ours is one of the only technology which actually goes with injection molding, and that will increase and improve the consistency of manufacturing. Where we are looking for is what Partho just said, is we are looking at right opportunities to come across. And believe me, 35% CAGR is lesser in India. I mean, we can beat it by probably 70 to 100% year on year. That's the growth target that I'm looking at. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deepak Kushadevi. I'm the MD and CEO of CLTORE India. CLTORE is a pioneer then and one of the global leaders in floating industry. So we have executed more than 300 plus projects in 32 countries in 5 continents, and cumulatively 1.7 gigawatt of floating projects installations ongoing, floating projects installing. Coming back to India, right, I started this organization in 2018 onwards. For the last 4 years, we have marched through all the difficulties and technical and policies issues, but still we crossed 120 megawatt of floating installation in India the last 4 years. And one of the largest, India's biggest, the first biggest 75 megawatt of project has been also conceived in a world record 70 working days. So a lot of being first is being initiated, installed, but as a floating fraternity, we are trying to figure it out how we can work together, solve all other technical issues and challenging issues. And I myself see, right, I will be signing another like 200 plus megawatt of projects for this upcoming couple of months. So the prosperity is already there. I'm looking forward for more from this session. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Dharmendra Kumar. I'm from IHS Market, which is now part of S&P Global. And I'm into research reports for solar market, and when I say about research reports, we do research from the solar modules to the inverters, to the EPC and to the developers, and we also produce reports on the floating solar market. As per our current report, we are expecting that by 2026, globally around 13.7 gigawatt of modules will be installed. Floating PV modules will be installed, and then at the same time, we are also seeing that by end of 2021, around 3.4 gigawatt of FPV has been installed. Out of that, if we see around, say, 800 to 900 megawatt was installed within the year 2021 itself. So that itself is showing that a lot of FPV has already been installed and it is picking up for sure. However, we are also seeing that the major chunk, that around 70% of the total market is coming out of the Southeast Asia market, including India. And when we are talking about the 70% of the market, we are talking about India, we are talking about mainland China, Taiwan, Indonesia, and there are many more new projects which are coming up and which have been announced. I think we'll be talking about them in the rest of the questions going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Deepak, could you enlighten us just on floating PV? What separates that from the ground mount? What are the main advantages, the main benefits, major benefits that you have from floating?
I think the positivity of floating solar is enormous, especially India, where you have a lot of irradiance. And just to sum up, right, the 92 megawatt Kayamkulam project itself, right, is clocking more than 100 megawatt. So that is the benefit of floating solar. So I just wanted to give that testimony. So 92 megawatt, and you're getting 100 megawatt out of it. It's quite substantial. So cliche statements like extra cooling, extra generations, then social and economical benefits, saving land, preserving water. So all these benefits are already, everyone knows that. So I'm just looking at how we can enumerate or cultivate this kind of floating symbolic representation of floating into our culture also. So because right, I see right India being the drought center area. So if you forget about the generations, if you put the floating panels, some sort of supportive, so the energy level, I mean the preservations, water evaporations, what we can save is enormous. So there it comes a social service. Then it comes to generation. So like, in ground mount, right, from the normal barren land has been converted, but agricultural land also been converted now for infrastructure development. So being 70% of India is still dependent on agriculture, right? Our lands should not be utilized further on this because infrastructure development is going on in one level. So land preservation is one thing which we have to take it. And forget about all this floating. So I'm saying, right, we as a renewable energy, we are trying to solve the biggest problem in the Mother Earth. I mean, I'm saying the global climate issues, which even the global leaders are looking into that. So climate change, you can see, right, the droughtness coming, unprecedented rainfalls, flood in Bangalore. So it never been heard before. So last 3-4 weeks or last 2 months, right, there has been unprecedented rainfalls and flood in rain in Bangalore, since I come from Bangalore. And then the IT infrastructure whole been collapsed. So this is the need of the hour of, getting into alternative energy. So floating solar is one among the armor which we have to do that. So why floating solar is again a question, right? Previously it was very curious in India, now it becomes very serious. And along with that, the benefits of preserving the symbolic representative of social and economical benefits. Normally, right, all the technologies really have economic benefits. New technology, new generation, new leads. But here we are getting kind of a social importance to that. I think I have answered.
Okay,
Thank you.
so many co-benefits, co-use of land. So thank you very much. Mr. Dharmendra, How would you segment the floating PV market? Which segments are there, and which one do you think is the more interesting one for India?
For the floating solar market, one particular thing that I want to make it very clear to everybody that at IHS market, we don't consider pile-based installation as floating solar. Any solar that is floating on the water, we consider only them as floating solar. And then at the same time, we are also looking at the floating solar at the moment that we are seeing is happening in India, is happening in rest of South Asia. We are also seeing the markets are coming up in Netherlands. It's already growing a lot. We are seeing the markets in Israel. We are also seeing a lot of I would say that buzz in the Middle East market, but not the installation has just started a bit on the pilot basis. So what I'm trying to say here is that the pace of installation has started. However, I think in the beginning, not more than 1 megawatt size of FPV installations will be happening. However, when we are talking about the markets like Indonesia, wherein they are planning to do floating PV installation in Indonesia and then transfer that electricity via subsea cables to Singapore, these kind of huge installations will be a pioneer for the floating PV installation market. At the same time, we are also hearing that Australia is planning to do floating PV installations and also ground mount installations, and then move all the electricity from there to back to Singapore again, wherein Singapore is going to buy all the electricity produced. So these are some of the floating PV markets which are going to grow in future, and I don't think that future is very far, because some of these, like Indonesia is already doing a 100 megawatt project already, and I think it's expected to be commissioned by end of this year. So since they already have got the experience, there are chances that these projects will again kick off, and Singapore is involved, so there is no problem in terms of finances. All we are saying is that some markets will be 100 megawatt plus market, and some of them will be smaller than 5 megawatt or 10 megawatt. But these markets are going to grow for sure.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Sachin, you mentioned about injection molded systems. There are different types of floating systems. We have blow molding, injection molding, pontoon systems, pipe-based systems. Do you see a conversion, a coexistence on that? It's still early phase for that. Which direction do you see the technology evolving?
That's a very good question. And what I feel is this will be all, it's going to be a bouquet of technologies which are available. So there'll be not one technology which will be superior to other. All of them are going to be inclusive, and they'll all be augmenting the total capacity. There is only one concern that we need to face, is there are certain technologies which have got a lot of research, and that research is definitely showing. So I'm very happy, that CLTerry has 100 megawatt from 92 megawatt system. That's the proof that we would want to demonstrate, and that's how the technology has to be. I'm more worried about the Indian context of getting in lower capacity or cheaper floats coming into the market, spoiling the market and destroying the marine ecosystem because of what is it called, the microplastics, because the right kind of HDP, the right kind of binding agents, the right kind of UVs not introduced into the system will destroy the marine life, destroying the technology, because people will not say what is done. People will just say floating solar has this problem. So they will not pinpoint it to a particular company. They'll pinpoint it to the mass thing. That's the whole concern that I face. And that's the reason we need to choose the right technology. And I was just speaking to Deepak that we need to come across trying to come up standards for the technology that has to be put in. You cannot just put in a bottle can float. So that does not mean you put a bottle in the water.
Correct. So maybe some challenges, we'll come back to that later. Maybe on certification that would require quite some steps, right?
Yes.
And question for Mr. Parto. You alluded on it on your introduction. But if you could give some words about your recent contributions in the industry, or Sungrow's contributions, what has been the biggest challenge so far for getting projects
going? As in
going?
India market or as in globally for FPV?
We can focus on the India market.
Yeah, India market, the module prices actually, even if you see the market has grown up, there is 2 gigawatts of tendering in process, but they are stuck at various level only due to the module prices. So we could understand that one sector of floating solar is getting hampered due to the module prices. So first challenge is the module. People are ready to order floaters, but they are unable to, because what if they have the price and the dynamics of the market, whatever the price they are considering tomorrow and whatever the price that was there yesterday, it is changing a lot.
But
So
I think that will be a common hurdle for ground mount as well as floating. So
Same.
which challenges do you have specifically for developing floating systems?
and policy wise also, that there is no uniform policy on a state and a central level. Each state is bringing their own policy and there is a mismatch between that. If you could have a centralized policy which would be applicable to all the states and union territories, so it will bring like standardization also, like policy wise and standardized, we do not have one particular circular or guidance which is applicable to all.
Okay. Mr. Deepak, anything to add to those challenges?
See, we have two aspects of challenge. One is on the economic challenge and then the technical challenge. So I think both my co-persons, right, I have already explained, right, one is on the financial aspects, one is on the technical aspects. See, the key challenge is, I will always believe, right, floating is not all about floating, but floating for 25 years. So you have the, the water level variations, wind, waves, you name that underwater, the waves, tides, flood, all these things you only have anchoring techniques. So if you don't have a good anchoring techniques, if you don't have a buoyancy structured floats, if you do not know the know-how of having a one fixation element in a panel which can give a stress factor, one small fixing components in a float which can give you a fatigue element. So all this is from the technical aspects. Then comes to the floater. So we have seen, like, we have a decade age of experience, but still we consider the floating as a challenge. When we ourselves, after doing more than 300 projects, we consider this as a challenge. And new players coming into the market without anything, they said, sir, ho jayega sir, wo kadam karenge sir, we will do it sir. So these sort of statements, luring the developers or the EPCs to go for a very cheap product, eventually, right, collapsing the whole fraternity, floating fraternity. Imagine, right, 100 megawatt of project has been collapsed in India in the initial stage. What will happen? The floating chapter will be a closed chapter. So we need to ensure that a stringent methodology should be policy for these technical aspects to that. So floating is not that easy. Floating needs to have some sort of engineering science to that. Not just having a mold or not having a manufacturing facility cannot produce floats. You need to have some sort of detailed engineering studies, detailed anchoring studies to be there. This is from the technical perspective. Now comes the challenge of the pricing part. You see, after this COVID, the HTP prices, the commodity has been, prices has been crossed more than 60%. Even the modules, right, now 18 cents, now it is around 38 to 40 cents. So the commodity pricing has hiked up like anything. And he still, right, the PPA, if you see the pricing part is going on a lower side. So how you negate that? So what is the magic behind this? So we can clearly say there is a desperate element. A desperate element is there for winning these bids. This is what is getting us. So the commodity pricing is one thing. So how you're strategizing your partnerships, how you leveraging your experiences and getting into a lean engineering model to combat these surges is one key. That modules pricing is maybe a temporary phase. We are still expecting to come down. Post this Ukraine war and all this inflation starts to come. So I think we should have a hope. We should have some sort of a urge to combat this pricing. And also at the meantime, we should come with some sort of policy or some sort of understanding with the developers and the EPCs, the policy makers that, it's not all about pricing. It's all about balancing the act. Sustainability is also important. A developer getting it, he has to his asset has to be protected for 25 years. So how he has to ensure that? He has to ensure with the bare minimum of technology validations. He need to have ensure that even the modules he's using, right, it should be lasting for 25 years. So some sort of scientific evaluation, so technical evaluation, logical and practical evaluation has to be mastered in this program.
Yeah. So there are quite some typical technical challenges for floating, right? Mr. Sachi, you wanted to add something to this? And also if I can continue with you after you put your comment on this, what you consider if you are a client or if you're a developer, what are the areas that you would be paying particular attention to? Yeah, because it is different from ground mount. What is the area where you should really focus on if you want to consider a floating system?
The biggest challenge that I personally feel is the use of land. If I put it in perspective, all of us know that 1 megawatt needs 4 acres of land. If you just do a back of envelope calculation, 1 gigawatt would need 4,000 acres of land. And if at all I go in with positive, and I'm sure we're going to reach this, 120 megawatt will need approximately 5,000 acres of land. 50,000 acres of land, correction. If I put it in the right perspective, this translates to 2,428 square kilometers of land required to install solar projects in India. So we're talking about 2,400 square kilometers. Do you know what is the area of Singapore? It's 724 square kilometers. Do you know area of Delhi? It's 1,400 square kilometers. Mumbai is 800 square kilometers. So when you look at it, we are going to gobble 1.5 times Delhi just to put solar energy, just to put power. What is the logic when India has 18,000 square kilometers of water bodies, which is documented. It is in TERI report and it's pretty comprehensive and precise. We are only asking for 5% of water bodies, which translates to 280 gigawatt, which is 2 times the capacity or 2.5 times the capacity that we have. So where is the logic? I mean, I'm just asking a very basic question that A is you're not consuming land, B is you're consuming something which is any which way is there, and C is you're generating power from green energy. You can couple up with pumped hydro, you can couple up with so many other things and create technology solution. But the solution has to be focused. Now come back to your second question. The second question is what I feel is that there are 3 aspects of working that we need to do. First is appreciation of technology. What kind of technology and what kind of technology validation has happened. Floating solar is just not like supply of modules. Okay, you take these modules and install it. It never goes that way. There are 4 different aspects which need to be addressed. First is what is the kind of water bodies. Second, what is the kind of technology that is there. Third, what is the logistic cost which is there available for the project. And last is the anchoring and mooring which is required. So a floating solar cannot be only supply of floats. And I'm sure Deepak will agree with me that we never supply only floats. It's the comprehensive ecosystem. So a vendor who gives a comprehensive ecosystem is the vendor that our IPPs should provide, and somebody who has knowledge. And I completely agree with what Deepak says is after doing so many projects, every project is brand new because the concept is completely different. The water bodies will be different. The tides will be different. The water level variation will be different. Even the anchoring mooring points will be different.
So difficult to standardize, right? Quite difficult to standardize. Every
it
site
cannot
is
be
very
standardized.
difficult.
No, you need a right partner who gives an ecosystem. The designing has to be looked at. So kind of technology, whether you are using string inverters or a central inverters, the placement of the string and place inverters have to be looked at. So it's a complete comprehensive research which is done, which does not, let me put it, Indian clients' psyche is not to accept something which is technology or IP related. All we look at is the price, so it will be difficult.
Right. So maybe quite some task for the policy setters to build up a framework
Actually,
that could push that forward.
A couple of projects will not do justice and then people will realize. I mean, it's not going to be easy. You know, people will say that, okay, my project failed. Okay, then we need to do the analysis or root cause analysis, and they'll be say, okay, these are the 13 things that needed to be done, which were not done, so your project failed. So that's where it is.
And just to add some numbers to the problems which you have just stated, globally 61 gigawatt of FPV projects were announced by end of 2021. However, out of that, only 51 gigawatt has been in process. Remaining 10 gigawatt has been cancelled or terminated, or they have never taken off. The reason behind is that most of the projects which are being announced, they don't go for a feasibility study, they don't go for initial studies, and in the end we are ending up having no projects at all. So these feasibility studies, I think, should be taken up by the governments at the same time, and then when they are going for the tendering process, they should be providing these studies to the developers, and that makes the things go faster and even faster. And these cases are not happening only in India, it's happening in other countries as well. So I completely agree with what you said, that most of the feasibility studies which has to be done beforehand, before even going for the tendering process. And I believe that some of the companies are also helping the governments in doing so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Partho, what do you think is needed to strengthen the growth of floating PV in the Indian market? I mean, of course, you have an official segment, the government segment, tendering and so on, but there should also be a quite large CNI segment, right?
First is the mindset where people from right begin start comparing it with ground mounted. That has to be changed because it's a totally different thing. Maybe in the solar sector, so it will require an hand-holding phase. Now in solar also, when people were starting solar way back in 2009 and 10 in India, so the prices were so high, the rates they were giving. After that, government has announced VGF and everything, viability gap funding was provided. And that hand-holding took 2 to 3 years, and then they came on a financial terms, they came at a parity. Or now even the solar tariffs are going down. So they start directly with the financial, start comparing ground mounted with floating solar, and that is an injustice. You require time to give a technology, to develop, to have R&D, to work on not only a couple of projects, you require time for that. You need that help from the government, the policy maker, so that that industry will grow. And then after that, you need to grow that plant to a tree. And after that, you will get those fruits not so soon. So that part is required.
Yeah. And are there any concrete examples of policies set that would boost the growth of floating PV in India, in a particular state or in general?
Yeah, so in a company-wise, like NTPC is doing, NHPC is doing, on a government company-wise they are doing. State-wise, Kerala has been very aggressive and they have already done projects and they have brought out tenders, and now other states are also following it up. But there is a backlash also, like Maharashtra comes up with a tender and then goes back. Like SECI comes up with a tender and that it gets and over the year, one thing like he said that now the studies are being done. Initially, couple of years back, those were not happening. The feasibility study, the bathymetry study, nothing was happening. The developers, the EPCs, even as a float vendor or a floating stakeholder, we were also playing blind, that we don't know, and they will ask for a quotation, they will ask for a design, and we do not have the requisite inputs for it. So this is changing slowly. The pace what we would expect, it is not at that pace, but slowly this is happening.
All right. Thank you. Of course, yes, cost is always a major driver to get technology going. And in the end, any technology has to stand on its own feet, not only rely on policies. So, Mr. Deepak, do you think that floating PV costs will become on par with land-based systems? I mean, on itself, I know of the many other benefits, prevention of evaporation, not use of land, that can be factored into a cost. But if you look at a system-to-system cost, is it possible to bring them on par?
To an extent, yes, because few years back we were like 30-35%, now reduced to 20%, now less than 10%. So here we are. But at what rate we are proceeding and we are descending the rates is also important, that we are not deteriorating the quality of the standards. So it's not just, see, you have to do an apple-to-apple comparison. So here it's not apple-to-apple comparison. One is land. Land you only need piling and you only need to know the SPT. That's it. Here we need to look into the bathymetry, we need to look into the topography, we have to look into the anchoring principles. I will just give an example. I have done 6 projects. I mean, I'm just just putting us in a familiar way. 6 projects I did. I had to use 4 different types of anchoring techniques, anchoring technologies. Against anchoring technologies, I need to go for a different make and manufacturing part of anchors. So, as previously said, we don't have a standard designs we can give it to the people. It's all site specifications. So if you have a 50 meter per second or you have 150 meter per second, right, the anchoring principles will change. If you have a 5 meter depth or you have 25 meter depth, you cannot use, you can use 5 meters normal anchors or divers, but for 25 meters you have to use robotic anchors. So the principles vary. I think, right, if you go for a very simpler, not challenging sites, and because of the extra generations and LCU factors over a period of 25 years, I think if you see from that mathematics, yes, we can compete with ground mount. And you are asking for a extremely site challenging conditions. Probably the floating cost may be slightly on a higher side. But having said that, right, the biggest impact is on the social and economic impacts we are creating. That cannot be seen. That cannot be matched parallel. You see that for 100 megawatt, right, we are talking about 50,000 acres. So imagine the 50,000. Yeah. So take it. So whatever the numbers you're talking about, right? So you say one megawatt, you need like 3 acres. So you can say that from that aspect. So 3 to 3.5 acres, probably. We are, trying to get back the natural land to this. I mean, obviously, right, other factors of compliances, land acquisitions, delaying in land, all these things are there. But the biggest aspects to this, right, is on the social benefits which we are giving to that company. So preserving land and saving water is important. And so if you save from there and also getting the extra generation, right now, we are already ahead of that. The only thing is that a due diligence, proper study on the anchoring techniques, which type of floating is peculiar, whether it is affecting the flora and fauna, whether it is affecting the natural ecosystem, whether it is affecting natural ecosystem, including the tourism, fishermen. So a lot of things are there we have to consider. We just don't go into the pure economics, whether this is feasible, this is economical or not. So we have to take a different approach, a two-dimensional approach we have to take into that aspect.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Sachin, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, the single biggest takeaway is the generation that is between 8 to 15% depending upon the water body. That is the single biggest. Yes, we are 10% more expensive, but you are generating 10 to 15% more year by year for 25 years. That is the first takeaway. And I was just trying to understand.
Because of the higher radiation, right?
Yes, because of the water level, the temperature and other things. And when this industry takes the full blow-up scale, I was just making an assessment. This will give employment to approximately 16, 17 fields of business, which includes marine biologists, which will include the roads, water consultant, the civil persons to get into it with kind of 280 gigawatt will give 16 different avenues for employment, fields for employment, let me put it this way. So this is one single bigger takeaway, that it will not only give you power, but it will also generate a lot of employment.
Right. And it's in a specialized field, so
ultra specialized.
Where are we now? Do we have the supply chain in place?
None.
Are there enough parties or consultants offering that expertise?
No, not.
Mr. Dipro.
it's happening. Again, we have started expecting things before they start to happen. So these are all projections and we are waiting things to move forward. 2 gigawatts are in tendering phase and only 300 is installed. So we are expecting these things with only 300 in India. When we are telling 300 megawatt installed in India and 2000 megawatt is going on. So we are expecting things beforehand.
How about financing of projects? Is that a particular problem with floating, or do banks accept the new technology and extend the financing for the projects easily?
Financing, we don't have faced any issues till now.
So I just wanted to give a different aspects to that. So obviously, right, it's a different technology. A lot of risk is involved because it's like, you know, putting your, basically, right, in layman's language, right, putting your investment in water. So how you can preserve it, how you can save, this is what. So even the bank level, right, they will appoint some sort of, you know, what do you call representatives or vetting the technology. Some consultant will be there, financial consultant, financial independent consultant, like that. A lot of features are coming into picture. So they need to understand whether the investment they are seeking, let's say the developer is looking for a fund, investment from bank, and the bank has to ensure that, you know, whatever amount he is going to get is secured, it is not going for a win, and it's not going to be an NPA, non-performing assets. So that sort of due diligence they will be doing it. There where our technology comes picture, wherever the routing is there, the technology is there. So the independent financial, what do you call it, the people, they will be assessing the technology. They will be looking at the in-routing into our routes and figuring out whether, how competent are we here, how much we have delivered, what is our source of strength, and even the parenting, they will look into that. So if we are going that type of due diligence, definitely the bank will be comfortable to at least the proven technologies. For the new technologies, yes, there is a risk is there. So all they have to come up with their own strategies and they have to show their mettle in the battlefield. But for the bankings, if it is a proven technology, it's fair enough. They will be, you know, giving that kind of a green signals. This is what we know, because few developers personally told me also right now, when it comes to the proven technologies, should not be an issue. Only thing they are looking into the IR and other aspects, which the developers are looking into that. So finding, you know, floating has to go, and if there is an opportunity there floating, right, they will always look at, you know, bankable factors. So in our sense, I will give one more element to that. The European banks, after we done close to 50 or 60 projects, they agreed to give finance, I mean, like insurances to that, third-party insurance to the components. So it was not that easy. So after the 50th project, 60th project, now we are in 300 projects. So any issues happen because of my technology or, you know, hydro release issues, technological design issue or the product issue, the third-party components, be the panel, inverters, BOs, any components will be compensated or insured against because of our issues. So that's is we say about bankable solutions. So the provenness is coming into bankable solution. I hope, right, the companies, I mean, especially right, the people over here, right, there are proving solutions, and the proven solutions will definitely give an advantage in the market. And I always believe, right, everyone has a role here, which is a big market, so everyone has a pie. I can't do the full projects, he can't do it. So it's a combination of a togetherness, giving a priority to technology, to quality, than into these, you know, number games. So that's what it matters. And when it matters, the bank will matters the technology, and there we feel, right, that more than numbers, they are looking at the technology, which is the contradictions. The developers are looking at the numbers, the bank is looking at the technology. So that is the ultra opposite is happening, which is really important.
Maybe a question, Mr. Sachin, on the operation and maintenance, which is also, of course, a main concern. Of course, you're building on a body of water, so there is less dust affecting the panels. But to date, I have not seen any robots working on any system anywhere in the world on a floating system. I'll tell a small story. I was, I believe it was a month and a half back, 2 months back in South Korea, and I saw a system that was a test bed. They were trying to keep the birds away from the system with lasers, with sound, with flags, with all kind of different systems, and with fairly little effect. So are there any comments that you can give on that? What is the best way to approach O&M or maintenance for floating?
So let's break this up into 3 points. First part is the O&M, where is the genuine O&M in reference to maintenance and cleaning of the system. So there are some technologies which may need divers. There are some technologies which can be repaired from the top, so you don't need any divers to get into it. So that comes the cleaning part and the electrical maintenance part. The second part is the electrical line which gets into it. That also needs maintenance because some of them require submarine cables to be there. So that has to be also looked at. And the last part is the bird droppings and the cleaning. So you are right. I'm sure CL Terre will have some cleaning mechanism. And what the trick here is that moment the numbers start building up, cleaning companies will start springing up. So it's only matter of time wherein the cleaning solutions would come in. And I would also want to look at a concept of a digital twin or an IoT on floating solar. So that's something that will be interesting across the technology, across the board, wherein we actually can monitor the waves and things like that to ensure that the generation happens. So
they have a more customized approach to the cleaning. Correct. Let me round up with a question for all, which is company outlook for 2025, and I would start with you.
So as I said earlier, that around 51 gigawatt of projects are already planned across the globe. And then with that, we are expecting out of 51 gigawatt, at least 16 gigawatt is expected to be installed by end of 2026. And again, when you are talking about the major installations will continue to happen in mainland China, Taiwan, Japan, India, and Netherlands, followed by the new projects which have been announced from Indonesia, Thailand. Vietnam has also some big announcements, but for the time being, they have stopped doing installations, wherein they're having problem with their infrastructure. So we will not be seeing much there. However, the government is already working on the their PDP 8 plan. So these are some of the markets where we will be seeing a lot of FPV coming up in the future. At the same time, technology enhancement will also be coming into picture, wherein we may see that the installation number may go higher than what we have forecasted. When I'm talking about technology enhancements, I'm also talking about, right now we have only floats, but there are some companies which are working on membrane technology, which the HDP floats, and then at the same time there are some companies which are working on tracker solutions. And then tracker solutions for this for the FPV at the moment is quite new, but some companies are already working on the pilot solutions on some of the pilot processes and projects. So these things these new technologies and new challenges, at the same time new studies, will definitely either bring the prices down or it will increase the IRR. And at the same time, we will be seeing if not right away, but after 5 to 6 years, we'll be seeing a parity in between the ground mount and the FPV technology. It's just a matter of time, and we have to see through it that how much all the technology players are able to contribute in this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Deepak, your view on outlook on the market, the next 2 years, what's your company planning for? Maybe focus on India?
Yeah. So I think we are in the direct, in the right approach we are doing is what is lean engineering. And the first phase is to set up a lab in India. So I started a lab in India. It is functional from the last 6 months, where we have incorporated few machines there, and we are doing a lot of testings, in-house testings, and the new products of different technologies. We are talking about injection molding. We are talking of different molding and other types. We are doing a lot of experiments to that. We are doing a lot of validations, and so until and unless the validation is completed, it will not be in the market. But so that lean engineering and new product development is happening. So more than 35 R&D engineers has been hired in the last 12 months. And I have got 6 to 7 French guys also working in the lab now to come up with this one. So adjacent to that, I have also created a pond where I can put all these prototypes and do this. So validation and prototyping is happening. And I got in touch with a few dam owners, especially state government dam owners, to do the pilot project there. So we already completed that one demo also in a big dam to understand the wave dynamics, to understand the wave breakers, the mechanisms, and also the new product development which we have done. So the prospect is on a high side. I can say that the speaker was talking about some new pipelines. More than the pipelines, right, the conviction and the belief in the developers or the nodal agencies are much more. And at least with this so-called installations coming up, the new guys in the business also will learn eventually. So even everyone of each project, we have a learners, right, because the site conditions are different. So the know-hows and the minuscule detailing of what went wrong also will be learned in our projects, and then we're taking it to a new aspects. So that improvisations and the continuing improvement process, these two plus the innovative factors which the developers are looking at. Developers are looking into only one aspect, which is on the costing part. Okay, you lower the cost. So how you can lower the cost? There is a balance. We have to do that against what? Quality or against what? So compromising on some of the components. These components can be crucial. Maybe not in this 5 years, but in the 10 years time. So that sort of structural understanding is important. And from India's perspective at floating, probably we can, next to 5 years, we can easily scale up to 2 gigawatt or 3 gigawatt with this current rate, unless a lot of some changes has been given, policy changes has been given. Like DISCOMs, all the DISCOMs are completely distressed. So if they are getting some sort of relief packages from the government, then the DISCOMs will be in a more comfort stage to get into more projects and all. Also, the banking fraternity, right? They have to take this renewable sector from the solar sectors, especially this from this alternative segments, because alternative segments are already bleeding. But solar, renewable energy is something which is new. So if you club it, what happens right now, like NPA is a lot in banking sector. So investments, getting liquidity and infusions will be a tough from the banking perspective. Also some previous subsidies should be there for this floating, renewable energy, because this is the need of the hour.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sachin, maybe your views on the market outlook?
We are trying to raise capital for putting up a plant for 1 gigawatt floating solar. So that's kind of positive thing that we're looking at in
1 gigawatt. Yeah. And Mr.
And we are also looking like 2 gigawatts in next 2 years that Indian market would be achieving.
Yeah, so significant growth
Yes.
forecasted. Great. Let me open to the floor for some questions from the audience, if any. Please.
See, as far as technical parts are concerned for the floating solar, there are so many challenges. For any electrical installation, earthing is the soul of any electrical installation. So, how we can get rid of this? How we can come out of the earthing challenging for the solar installation? As you rightly said that, the land is really because of land scarcity, we have to move on floating actually. But yes, we have to look into the ecosystems of the aquatic ecosystem also. Sachin has rightly said that for the floaters basically, there are so many things we have to do on part of floaters, anchoring and mooring. But what about the earthing actually? It's a pure technical actually. Yeah.
Who do you want to ask the question to?
Sorry?
Who would you like to have that question answered by?
Anyone can.
Okay, then
So it's too technical, and technical has to be done in the technical sessions. On a lighter note, see, this is one of the few questions, right? I will not say all the, from the technical people will be asking how you are doing the earthing, and how you are ensuring that no, the earthing is not is been properly earthed. I mean, that's the important thing. So we have 3 or 4 types of earthing mechanisms which we given to the people. So I know, right? You've been an esteemed person from Wadi, right? You can get in touch with us on that aspect. So we will show you, right, how we can do that. Probably a case study we can show you, right, what we did, and there is an alternative we are doing that. Especially in this 75 megawatt project, what we did in Kayamkulam, Kerala, which was the first largest project. So the earthing was slightly different. So the element of earthing and how we ensure that the water is not going into DP6 and all this stuff. And also right now how we ensure that it is the cabling, how we can do the proper cabling, because electrical is a sensitive. So even if you are IP67, IP65 and all, how much moisture content can be stopped. So you can dip it for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes or one day. Beyond that, what will happen? So all this stuff there. So there is a guideline we have established, guidelines we are giving. So in that guidelines we have this earthing. We have the cablings from evacuation, the DC cabling also. Then the string cable earthing, module to module cabling. So all these are there, and also how we are doing the earthings there. This is one question, especially the technical sections, engineering section will be asking how you are ensuring that. There are a few scenarios where we are not able to answer it because of the challenges. And then we have taken out that portion from that challenge aspects of floating perspective, and then we moved other side to ensure that the looping is also happening in series or parallel, whichever is the convenient way.
Well, thank you, Deepak. You people don't think that floaters should also become under the PLI?
Yes.
It should be actually.
Yes.
So it's a policy matter altogether, but yes, we have to raise our voice that it should be come under the PLI.
We have few questionnaires we wanted to give it to the policymakers. That is a combination of economic, like the banking, financial stress what we are going through, plus because the financial stress happens because when you go for a race, the first thing that we have to do is we should abolish this RA, reverse auctions, because this is the one thing which have started to erode all people's, whatever the quality they want to endurance. The endurances is being killed by these reverse auctions, and also the tariff rates, what you're talking about, and unhealthy competitions. Few things are there. This is on the prima facie on the larger aspects, but on the technical aspects, few things are there which we have to standardize it. So what we are doing is we are not looking into just like we have our own patent technology, not like that. I am working basically with a lot of nodal agencies, developers, EPCs, to share our know-how, share our the principles what we mastered, the mistakes what we learned, what we did and what we learned. All this we are telling them, irrespective of whether it is done by a third party or my colleague from other side. So we are supporting that way also. So a collective effort is required. We don't look into the numbers. We look into ensure that the floating is stabilized. It is seasoned well, nurtured well for the sustainability part. Then we can go for a competition.
I think there's also some industry initiatives. I believe one is led by DNVGL to work on 2 particular industry projects. One specifically geared to the floating device, and the other to gear towards a mooring, so that standards, so that certification can happen. So that's ongoing. But an association or a grouping that tables this to policymakers would probably also be a very good step in the right direction. Any other questions from the audience?
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks for the very good discussion on this floating solar. And some of the things we found it's very interesting, and it's quite an eye-opener for us. Basically, I'm Rajesh Pathak from SABIC India. And I just want to draw your kind attention to what Honorable Prime Minister committed for this renewable energy by 2030. I think 50% of the energy has to come from renewable energy sources. So that will be a big boost to even floating solar also. And I just want to understand more from the IHS, Mr. Dharmender. How is it going to, because there will be a huge jump in the, renewable energy. As of now, India's total energy consumption is around 500 gigawatt. By 2030, it will be close to 1 trillion, 1,000 gigawatt. So that needs a huge commitment to generate such kind of energy. Naturally, a lot of demand will come from this floating solar itself. And as I think I got reference, that TERI study. So 280 gigawatt, it's a huge energy. So there is immense potential in India itself. So how this floating solar industry will be impacted? Because a lot of people are working on this entire value chain. And because we are also associated with, this supporting this floating solar industry, especially on the SDP front. And we just understand, because this is a very important element for us, to invest in this,
I
in
will
this
give
arena.
a very short answer because
Yeah.
I can see Madam is already looking at me. That time is already up, right?
Yeah, thank you.
So what I'll tell you is that the government has been planning a lot. The government has planned for 100 gigawatt by end of 2022. And this is, after 2-3 months, we'll be reaching our end of 2022 and we have hardly done 50 to 60 gigawatt at the moment in terms of solar. Now the new target is 280 gigawatt by 2030. If we go back a little bit, then we'll see that the government has already announced 20 gigawatt plus 20 gigawatt of solar installation out of solar parks. Out of that, 20 gigawatt, the initial announcement which has happened, out of that 20 gigawatt, I think around 10 gigawatt, or 50% has been installed. Rest is still pending, and the remaining 20 gigawatt, which is total 40 gigawatt of solar parks were supposed to be done. That 20 gigawatt is also about to start installation. It has not started yet, but the lands has been identified. So that is another perspective. And at the same time, if you see that the way NTPC and SECI are tendering their new solar projects, with that, it seems to be that if at all the 280 gigawatt target has to be achieved by 2030, it has to be 15 gigawatt each year, 15 gigawatt AC. And to give you the right perspective at the moment, in 2022, as of now, from January till August, India has already installed 11 gigawatt AC, which is around, say, 14 to 15 gigawatt DC has already been installed, which in itself is a record-breaking number, and we are about to reach our 2022 target, and the government will try its best to push it as much as possible so that they can reach at least 60 to 65% of the total installation. So if this is happening, which we were not even thinking 4 years or 5 years back, that India will be able to achieve at least 50 gigawatt, but we have already achieved. So this is just a matter of time and a lot of incentives at the time of, and the support which has to be given by the government. And I think developers and installers are already waiting for this opportunity. We are seeing a lot of module manufacturing happening, a lot of announcements have happened, so we could see some results out of that in next year as well. That's all I will say about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me just add
Thank
on
you.
to that. I think one of the big advantages of floating is that once, and it's of course a big if, once the permits are being granted, that the deployment of floating PV on a body of water is faster than what you would normally achieve for on land. So I think we need to round up. So all that's left for me is to thank the audience for staying this late. I'd like to thank also REI for the organization and of course the panelists. So maybe a warm hand of applause for our panelists. And thank you all and have a good show.
All right, so this was the last session. I would like to request our moderator, Carol De Winter, to please present our co-moderator, Mr. Dharmender Kumar, a small token of love on behalf of REI. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir. We hope to see you next year as well. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. To Mr. Siddhant Agarwal. He's not here? Okay. To Mr. Yes. To Mr. Sachin Rale. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. To Mr. Partho Ganguly. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir. Hoping to see you next year as well. I would like to request our co-moderator, Mr. Dharmender Kumar, to kindly present A small token of love to our moderator, Carol De Winter, for conducting such an amazing session. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to request Mr. Dharmendra Kumar to present token of love to Mr. Deepak Usha Devi. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir.